Welcome to another deep dive. We're going to be looking at some Indian divorce law today. I know it doesn't sound like the most captivating topic, but stick with us because this one is actually pretty fascinating. It revolves around a case, Vishnu Dutt Sharma v. Manju Sharma, and it really gets you thinking about the expectations surrounding marriage, especially for men.
Yeah, this case from the Indian Supreme Court back in 2009 really kind of opens a window into a lot of the pressures men face in a society that doesn't always recognize or validate their struggles.
So paint the picture for us. What's going on in this case? Who are these people and what are they claiming?
Okay. So we've got Vishnu, the husband who filed for divorce. He's saying his wife, Manju, was cruel to him and to his family. And he describes her as, he says she was disrespectful and hardly ever even stayed at their home. Like, he claims she never spent more than 25 days there at any one time.
So already you can tell this was not a happy marriage. What kind of cruelty are we talking about here?
Yeah, so that's where things get a little fuzzy. Vishnu uses the word derogatory to describe Manju's behavior toward him and his family, but he doesn't really give specific examples. Like, what exactly was she doing that was so bad?
It sounds like he's being intentionally vague.
Yeah.
Maybe trying to make her look bad without actually having to back it up. You know?
Yeah, it's possible. He also brings up the fact that Manju left while she was pregnant and never came back. And then there's the added element of, he says that her family threatened him. Her dad was a retired police officer and her brother was a police constable at the time.
Oh, wow. So he's really painting a picture of her and her family as the aggressors here. But you said things were fuzzy. Is that because her side of the story is very different?
Oh, yeah. It's totally different. In fact, Manju completely turns the tables. She claims she was the victim of abuse from Vishnu and his family.
Hold on. So now he's the abuser. That's a pretty big accusation. Did she have anything to back that up?
Oh, she did. She actually presented medical records from a hospital in Delhi Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital. They document injuries she got from a beating, apparently from Vishnu and his family. And this was back in 1994, September 14th to be exact.
Wow, that is a complete 180 from what Vishnu is saying. So we've got accusations of abuse flying from both sides.
Yeah.
Sounds like a very volatile situation.
It definitely was. And it gets even more intense. Manju also alleges that Vishnu and his mother stole her jewelry and gave it to his brother's wife.
What?
Seriously.
That's awful.
Yeah. And when she confronted them about it, she says they beat her again. And this is crazy, even tried to set her on fire.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
Okay.
With those kinds of accusations and medical records to back them up, I'm assuming the courts believed Manju?
Yeah, both the trial court and the high court sided with Manju. They determined that she was, in fact, the victim of cruelty. And this is where things get interesting, legally speaking. And this is where we start to see how the system can sometimes fail men, even in situations like this.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What happened?
So Vishnu's lawyer, he tries something pretty unusual. He argues that the marriage should be dissolved because it's, basically beyond repair, like irretrievably broken.
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? If it's clear that there's no hope for the relationship, why force them to stay together? Mm-hmm. Was that a common legal strategy in India at the time?
No, not at all. Actually, irretrievable breakdown of a marriage wasn't a valid reason for divorce in India back then. So it was a pretty bold move by Vishnu's lawyer, but it ended up highlighting a really big problem in the legal system. Like, how do you deal with the realities of a relationship when the law doesn't really acknowledge those realities?
Right, because even if the marriage is totally messed up and everyone's miserable, the law might still say, nope, sorry, you're stuck.
Exactly. And that's what makes this case so important. It sparked a big debate in India about whether irretrievable breakdown should be a legal ground for divorce. And it also brought up this whole issue of how men are often pressured to just stay silent about their struggles, especially in a situation like this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. We talk a lot about how divorce affects women, but men go through it too, and they don't always have the support or the resources to deal with it.
That's right. I mean, just think about Vishnu's situation. He was in a marriage that was clearly falling apart with accusations of abuse from both sides. But even if he wasn't the abuser, it's clear that this relationship was broken, and the legal system at the time, it didn't offer him a way out just because the marriage wasn't working.
So it's like, even if he was miserable, he was just supposed to suck it up and stay.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's that's where the societal pressure comes in, you know? There's this expectation that men should just, I don't know, tough it out and not show their emotions. And when the law doesn't give them an out, it just makes them feel even more trapped.
It's like a double whammy. On the one hand, you've got society telling men to bottle up their feelings. And then on the other hand, the legal system is saying, well, even if you're unhappy, you can't leave.
Exactly. In this case, it kind of becomes a symbol of all that. You know, it shows how much men can struggle to get support and to navigate the legal system when it comes to divorce.
That's really insightful. I want to go back to the specifics of the case for a second. The courts decided that Manju was the victim, right? But did they even address Vishnu's claims, like about her being gone from the house all the time?
You know, the court documents, they don't really go into detail about Vishnu's side of things. They mainly focused on Manju's allegations and the evidence she presented, which, like we said, was pretty strong. Right.
So it's possible that they saw her absences as a result of the abuse, not as her being disrespectful to Vishnu and his family.
Definitely. It's really important to remember the context here, you know.
Yeah.
When we're talking about abuse, we have to understand that sometimes the victim's actions are about protecting themselves. Sometimes leaving a bad situation, even if it goes against what society expects, is the only way to stay safe.
That's a really important point. Okay, so back to the legal fight. Why didn't the Supreme Court grant the divorce based on the irretrievable breakdown thing?
Well, what they basically said was, it's not our job to make new laws. That's for the legislature to do. They pointed to the Hindu Marriage Act, specifically Section 13, which lays out the specific reasons you can get divorced, and irretrievable breakdown, it just wasn't on that list.
So they couldn't rule in his favor because the law was very specific, even if the situation itself was, like, obviously over.
Right. They were sticking to the letter of the law. They did say that some courts had granted divorces for irretrievable breakdown in the past, but they said those decisions didn't really have a legal basis and didn't set a precedent.
Okay, so that's a tough break for Vishnu. But you said earlier that this case started a bigger conversation about changing the divorce laws, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Even though the Supreme Court didn't rule in his favor, his case brought a lot of attention to this issue of irretrievable breakdown. It made people really start thinking about whether the laws were actually working and if they were fair to everyone involved.
So in a way, Vishnu's case, even though he didn't get what he wanted, it could end up helping other people in the future.
Yeah, I think so. It's like he didn't win his own battle, but he might have started a war that leads to some much needed change. And that change is about recognizing that divorce isn't always about someone being at fault. Sometimes it's just about acknowledging that a relationship is broken and letting people move on with their lives.
And that's especially important for men, right?
Yeah.
Because they're often the ones who are told to just keep quiet and deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. This whole case, it forces us to look at how the legal system and society in general can actually harm men's mental health when it comes to marriage and divorce.
And this whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. We started with just one divorce case, and now we're talking about, like, societal expectations and legal loopholes and the impact all of this has on people's emotions and their mental well-being.
It's amazing how much you can uncover when you start digging into these things, right? I mean, we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
This case raises questions about what marriage really means, what the role of law should be in relationships, and how our society needs to adapt as gender roles change.
Totally. Okay, but before we wrap up, I want to know, what happened to Vishnu after the Supreme Court made their decision? Like, were he and Manju still legally married? Did anyone appeal the ruling or anything?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, the court documents, they don't give us those details. All we know is that the Supreme Court's decision was final. So that was it for Vishnu, legally speaking, at least at that time.
So he hit a dead end.
Yeah, in terms of the law, he did. But like we've been talking about, his case brought a lot of attention to this whole idea of irretrievable breakdown as a reason for divorce. And that conversation, it's still going on in India today. People are pushing to make it a legitimate reason to get divorced. So it's like Vishnu might not have won his case, but he might have accidentally started a movement.
It's kind of like he lost the battle, but maybe maybe helped win the war.
Exactly. And it just shows that even when someone loses a legal case, their story can still have a huge impact. It can bring about changes that help countless other people down the line. This isn't just about Vishnu and Manju anymore. It's about all the people who are struggling in their marriages, who feel trapped and alone, and who need the system to recognize their pain and their right to move on.
It really makes you think, How many other people are out there stuck in these situations feeling totally alone because they don't see a way out?
Yeah, and not just legally, but emotionally too, right? We tend to focus on the legal stuff, the logistics, but the emotional impact of a divorce, it can be really tough, especially for men who might feel like they're not supposed to show their feelings or ask for help.
And that's a big problem, right? Because ignoring those feelings, it doesn't make them go away. It just makes things worse.
Exactly. And this case, it really highlights that. It makes us confront this whole idea that men should just, be strong and get over it. But that's not how it works.
So what can we do? How do we change things so that everyone involved in these situations, men and women, feel like they can get the support they need?
I think it starts with just acknowledging that men go through this too, that they feel the pain of a divorce just as much as women do. And we need to create a space where they feel comfortable talking about those feelings without being judged or told to just man up.
So it's about changing those old-fashioned ideas about what it means to be a man.
Right.
Like this idea that men aren't supposed to be emotional or vulnerable.
Exactly. And we need to start talking more openly about the challenges men face when it comes to marriage and divorce. And maybe most importantly, we need to push for laws that recognize that sometimes a marriage is just over, that it's broken beyond repair, and that should be enough to get a divorce. It shouldn't have to be about who's at fault.
Because being in a marriage that's completely broken, it doesn't help anyone. It hurts both people, and if there are kids involved, it hurts them too.
Absolutely. This whole case, it's a reminder that these legal battles, they're just one part of the story. There's so much more going on beneath the surface, There are real people with real emotions, and the decisions that are made, they can have a huge impact on their lives.
Yeah, it's not just about the law. It's about people's lives.
Right. And it's about recognizing that outdated laws and societal expectations, they can have real consequences.
This deep dive has been, it's been a lot to take in, but it's been really important, I think. It's shown us how much men can struggle in these situations. And it's challenged us to think about how we can do better, how we can be more supportive and understanding.
It's a reminder that every story, every case, it has the power to teach us something. And sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places.
So, to everyone listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What did you find most interesting or surprising about this case? Have you ever felt stuck in a situation where you didn't see a way out? And what do you think about all this, about marriage, divorce, and how we can better support men who are going through these challenges?
Let's keep this conversation going. These are important issues, and by talking about them, by sharing our experiences and our ideas, we can start to make a difference.
That's what the deep dive is all about. Exploring these complex topics, digging deeper, and hopefully making you think, making you question, and maybe even inspiring you to create some positive change in your own life. And until next time, keep diving deeper.